Mexico City, with 25 million people, one of the largest cities in the world. But this was once a wilderness area, a valley of saltwater lakes and swamps surrounded by mountains and active volcanoes. At the beginning of the 14th century, a tribe of nomads called the Mexica settled here. They gave their name to Mexico and its capital, but they are better known as the Aztecs. The Aztecs transformed themselves from nomads into rulers of the most powerful empire Central America had ever known. But after only 200 years, it would all be gone. Eyewitness accounts of Aztec life, intricate illustrated records, portray a highly sophisticated and literate society. Yet there was a dark side to Aztec life. They lived in fear. Ritual human sacrifice was carried out on a scale otherwise unknown throughout history, and it's for this, above all, that the Aztecs are remembered. How did human sacrifice find a place within such a civilized society? Who were the Aztecs really? Barbarians or a great world civilization? When the Spanish conquistadors first saw Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, it was so beautiful that they thought they must be dreaming. They called it the Venice of the Americas. At the height of the Aztec Empire in 1519, the Spaniards had landed on the Gulf Coast of Mexico. Hearing about the famed riches of the Aztecs, they were here to make their fortunes. This is the only place left where you still get a feel of how it was in the ancient Aztec capital, a city built entirely on water. And you never know, maybe an Aztec holiday was a bit like this. With over 200,000 inhabitants, at its peak, Tenochtitlan was one of the largest cities in the world. Today's Mexico City was built on the same site. This area still supplies the city with flowers, just as it did 500 years ago for the rituals in the Aztec capital. It was these rituals that so shocked the Spaniards.
We saw the men being dragged up the steps to be sacrificed. The priests laid them down on their backs and, cutting open their chests, drew out their palpitating hearts, which they offered to the idols before them. Then they flung the bodies down the steps.
Interpreting the cultures of Mexican history has been a lifetime study for novelist Carlos Fuentes.
The whole conception of the world of the Aztecs is so alien to our modern sense of the world that we can only guess, we can only hint. The Aztec regime, to put it in a nutshell, was a regime at odds with itself.
How could the Aztecs create a beautiful city with such violence at its heart? Clues lie in what the Aztecs found when they first arrived in the Valley of Mexico. They were originally a nomad tribe of Native American Indians living in the north of what is now Mexico. A tribal prophecy told them to journey south and to build a city where they saw an eagle landing on a cactus. According to their history, it was here in this inhospitable swampland that the prophecy came true. At the edge of the valley, 30 miles north, the Aztecs came across Teotihuacan. People had first settled in this place 1,000 years before the Aztecs arrived here, but they had long since disappeared. The Aztecs discovered a great ghost city. The architecture seemed to reflect the ideas of the Aztecs themselves. They even adopted as their own the gods that were carved into these ancient temples, the rain god and the feathered serpent who would eventually bring them to grief. David Carrasco's work explores the profound impact of other cultures on the Aztecs.
The Aztecs of the 15th and 16th century would have been drawn to Teotihuacan because of the monumentality of the place. Teotihuacan is one of the great world cities and the largest ceremonial center in Mesoamerica. The Aztecs, looking for their own origins, their own legitimacy, would have been attracted to this city.
With their nomadic background, the Aztecs envied the great architectural heritage and history of their predecessors in the Valley of Mexico. They took many things from this place, including the setting for their creation myth. The Aztec creation story described how the universe had already passed through 4 eras or stages of the sun. The symbols for each age are depicted on the great Aztec sunstone. 4 feet thick, 12 feet in diameter, and weighing 24 tons, it was discovered in 1790 beneath Mexico City's central square. At its center is the face of the sun, a sacrificial knife in its mouth. According to the Aztec myth, each age had lasted hundreds of years and ended in destruction. When the 4th sun ended, the world was left in darkness. Now they imagined that the gods gathered here to build a fire and contemplate how they could bring forth another sun. To give the new sun energy to be born and to travel on its journey across the sky, the gods sacrificed themselves, jumping into the fire and cutting out their hearts, their own blood giving life to the 5th sun, the dawning of the Aztec age.
In this remarkable story, we see not only the idea of Teotihuacan as the primordial origin of the Aztec sun, we also see the participation of the gods in a self-sacrifice so that human life can then go on. This sets up for the Aztecs the crucial idea about human sacrifice, which was that when they sacrificed themselves, they were paying a debt back to the gods who had created the sun for them here in Teotihuacan.
The Aztecs believed that the daily journey of the sun could only continue while it was supported with blood. Human sacrifice on the American continent is most often associated with the Aztecs, but in fact it had been practiced for centuries by previous civilizations, including the builders of Teotihuacan, the Maya, and the Toltecs.
And all peoples that are very close to the origins have an enormous fear that the world will end. That once the sun sets, it will never appear again. That the forces of nature are extremely powerful and have to be pacified. And one of the ways of pacifying them traditionally in all peoples is through sacrifice.
In the hostile environment of the Valley of Mexico, the Aztecs felt at the mercy of the powerful forces of nature. 500 years ago, the mountains and volcanoes surrounding the valley were clearly visible from the Aztec capital, rare today given Mexico City's smog. Here, 30 miles outside the city, you get a clear view of what the Aztecs would have seen. The landscape holds vital clues to understanding how the Aztecs believed they could influence the gods. Art historian Dick Townsend was the first to map this area. Aztec shrines like this one mark sacred locations, the miniature pyramid steps echoing temple architecture. These were traditionally places to remember the gods of the natural world, to appease and support them by making offerings, flowers, food, drink, or blood.
Offerings would be made in these receptacles and it would run down over the face. This boulder was formerly stood upright and formed part of that whole ensemble. And then the ensemble itself really looks towards the great rain-producing mountains of the Valley of Mexico, Mount Tlaloc, and then more distantly, Ixtlacihuatl and Popocatépetl. It's a replication here in stone, what you see out in the natural setting. So in effect, this grouping of rocks forms a kind of miniature world.
To pacify the forces of nature, the Aztecs turned not just to the gods, but to their own sophisticated technology.